So I'm going to shut that down. And I'm going to introduce briefly, and let her Leslie introduce herself. Dr. Maureen Fairbrother, who lives in Middlesex County. Those of you who were in the school presentation that was immediately before us, let me see if I can find the slideshow. Well, let me just do it. Wait, you all can see that picture, I think. Middlesex County, we were told in the presentation, was one of the first schools, or the first to go solar in Virginia. And she is from Middlesex County. With that, I'm going to let her introduce herself. Is your mic on?
Hear me?
Yes.
You're talking to the mic.
Okay. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My husband and I are immigrants, obviously, to the USA. We came in 1977.
Maureen, close.
Closer, thank you. And we both worked in Pennsylvania until our retirement in Hartfield, Middlesex, Virginia, in 2007. We are serial come-heres. I'm so glad to retire. My concern was climate change. I became a very active member of Dr. Harvard's Citizens Climate Lobby up in Heathsville in the Northern Neck, and participated in the CCL annual June lobby of Congress in 2014. Rob Whitman, in the middle of that photo, is my congressman. And I realized that much more was needed besides market days. Okay. Market days, oyster and strawberry festivals, and monthly documentary film shows. Could you put the next? Okay, I painted that long post. You can't see too much on it. But it's an accurate representation of CO2 levels through the ice ages, and then as it got more and more desperate. And then the next picture, even then I was thinking, people have to realize they have to make choices. In 2015, the CO2 levels were 400 parts per million. And there were three choices. Straight up, red was doing nothing. Half-baked efforts took you way up to over 500, I think. And then the third choice was the green choice that eventually would stabilize us and bring down CO2 levels. So that's where I started from. Then we went to a talk, a really good one, by the Northumberland Association for Progressive Stewardship. And that was led by Leah Lane in Heathsville again. And we decided to install solar panels, but we wanted guidance, good value, and reputable installer. Hampton Roads Solar Tours were our next learning point. They had lectures in 2015 at their central site, and we learnt about Virginia Sun, solar co-ops, and their Aaron Such. It seemed a really good option for us. The next step was clear, though. If I wanted to join a co-op, I had to establish and recruit members from scratch. So all those years, like 7 years have gone by or more, and I now had contact circles. There was Citizens Climate Lobby, now it's the Northumberland Society, and there was the Hampton Roads, Southside Sentinel, our local newspaper. Very helpful. The Middlesex Libraries showed them to us. We used Rappahannock Community College for our launch. And if you could put the next slide up. We had 3 speakers. It was an evening session, and we had excellent attendance. 4 or 5 Middlesex County supervisors, board of supervisors, and our administrator came in April of 2016. Other launch events that we did, we tried to make them so they're educational. Looking back, the local newspapers were very supportive of getting word out. Numerous social contacts were also very, very important. Sheila Todd, who's in the room and is very shy, helped me with the Northern Neck. But it's a huge area. I mean, it really was an enormous area to cover. Local radio messages, notice boards at post offices and libraries did not seem to reach the people we needed. T-shirts are nice. I'm still wearing one right now. I'm not going to do a striptease. But I mean, I've been racking our brains as to how to get the word out in this rural area. People who got solar panels with our co-ops were like us, looking for guidance, good value, and a reputable installer. I realise now, they had to be able to afford upfront costs. Conservative rural Middlesex County, population 11,000, does not have a bell-shaped curve of income distribution. Low income, young people who are just getting by can't afford solar. High income, come here retirees who think they won't live long enough to reap the full benefits of solar. However, going forward, for people starting co-ops now, visible, real domestic solar panels are the best advert. Can you put the next ones up? Now, this was taken by our installer, Bernie Stanley, of our solar array. And if you put the next one up, that's Sheila's. Sheila is in a fantastic location in Kilmarnock, and she has referred quite a few people to Bernie, outside of the co-ops later. Climate change is largely accepted, and sustainable energy is seen as desirable now. It wasn't when we were starting out in our area. The economy is less depressed. And many people think past oversight of Dominion Energy has favoured the company's interest over the people's interests. And our science teachers are doing a good job teaching about climate change. Our students are aware. The post that you saw is used as a teaching tool in the science area of Middlesex Sir Clare Walker Middle School. The teacher tells me she had the students study Rachel Carson and Greta Thunberg recently. We've got, I think it's a megawatt capacity solar array serving the elementary and middle schools, saving $50,000 a year for the county budget with no upfront costs. A high school will soon be served by its own ground-mounted array. So this isn't bad for little old Middlesex County. The schools intend to use these arrays for teaching purposes, and that's the next picture, please. And you can see there's actually a picnic pavilion next door to them, and about half a dozen panels. And if you could just put the last slide up, these were put up by an Eagle Scout for his project to get his Eagle Scout. He graduated from our school system this last summer. So the only negative pushback has been about a new large commercial array on Route 17 near Hartfield. And the things I've heard are, what's the county getting out of the deal? And it spoils our rural scenic beauty. Apparently the screening bushes aren't growing fast enough. I think that hardly had a year to grow. And in our area, the thing that I'm concerned about is the upfront financing. So I was very pleased to hear about CPACE and things like that. I would like to see basic solar on all new houses, offered at least on all new houses, and especially in our area for habitat homes, where the upfront costs can be built into the mortgage and offset immediately by reduced electricity bills. I would like to see true community solar farms for for example, housing associations and county properties with county residents able to buy in, because a lot of our people are in amongst woods and it's very hard to get the sunshine coming reliably. I would like to see better information and outreach from Sun of VA to rural businesses and farms with presentations targeting chambers of commerce and agricultural organisations. And I would also like to see a real close coordination of our solar co-op launches with solar tour events. You've got a captive audience coming through these and seeing this on the solar tours, and that's a really good base for starting your co-op. But you also have to use all the contacts you possibly know, and I've missed out a whole lot of names that I really appreciate all the help that they gave us. So, is that quickly done?
That's great, thanks. So Maureen gave you pieces of the 4 aspects of the story that I mentioned at the outset. She got toward the end, even though she didn't cast it quite that way, I'd like to see came about. What you heard there, whether you realized it or not, was areas for advocacy in Virginia in particular. We do not have true community solar. The only community solar we have is what the utilities are willing to provide with special rate structures and so on. And we don't have, as you heard in the other panel here, we don't have a whole lot in the schools yet. So there's a lot of room to go forward. So Middlesex is a small rural county. Do you have, I think Kilmarnock, maybe your biggest small town?
No, it's Saluda.
Saluda.
And Urbana, where the Oyster Festival is. Sheila lives in Kilmarnock, that's Lancaster County in the Northern Neck.
Okay, so Northern Neck. Now we're going to move south along the coastline to Virginia Beach. We're going to hear from Ann Creasy. I'll let her introduce herself, and she will talk to you about her story in these areas. Okay, and I'm going to, I will take this down so you don't have to be black.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. My name's Ann Creasy, and I live and work in Norfolk, Virginia. I work for the Sierra Club. My position is Conservation Program Manager. Just to give you a little bit of background about some of the work that I've done related to solar in communities, it's helping to organize the Hampton Roads Solar Home Tours, both this past year and the year prior. And I've also helped to facilitate grassroots talking with their elected officials about important policy items. I'll get a little bit more into that here later in my talk. I'll talk a little bit about the Solar Freedom Bill that we're really pushing this year. I've also put together something called a Solar Town Hall, where we had elected officials come and give presentations. It's kind of was like a mini version of what we're doing here today at a library in Virginia Beach. And just really doing ongoing maintenance work with connecting people to their options, with joining solar co-ops, with Solar United Neighbors, and learning about the status of the policy around solar, especially distributed solar here in Virginia. I spend a lot of time talking to people about the differences between utility scale solar and rooftop solar, and how the policies in the state are not very favorable to distributed solar. And then drawing those connections for people as to why that might be, given that we have a very powerful monopoly utility corporation who has a lot of its own best interest in keeping policy where it favors utility scale solar over distributed solar. So that is a huge crux, I feel like, of advocacy, is that it's not just about climate change, it's not just about having clean energy that gives us fewer carbon emissions, but it's also about helping people understand the justice of understanding their policy and being involved in that process, so large corporations or utility scale monopolies are not making those decisions on your behalf. So a couple of different ways that you can in your area, or you can talk with me after this, some things that can be done. You can talk to your elected official, especially if your elected official ends up in the Commerce and Labor Senate Committee at the state level. That is where a bill called the Solar Freedom Bill, which the Sierra Club and other organizations are working on, that bill will be seen in that committee. And so that bill has to make it out of committee to be voted on. And so it's my understanding that sometime between now and the beginning of session, legislative session in January, we will understand those committee layouts. But there are some individuals who typically sit on the Commerce and Labor Committee where these energy bills are seen. Some people to look out for are Saslaw, Squirrel, Lucas. Those are all people in the Virginia Senate who will be making decisions on these bills. So please talk with me more, or go on to APAP or Google who your representatives are and what committees they will end up sitting in. And please call them, write letters to them, meet with them in person, and get them to make the right decisions so we can have the 1% cap on net metering eliminated, so that we can have the cap on power purchase agreements that allow nonprofits to finance solar be lifted, because we're coming up against that cap. I'm having trouble in my organizing work because I was out there in the streets saying, hey, we have this great way to finance solar, and you should take advantage of it. It's called a power purchase agreement. This is how you can get solar at no upfront cost on your schools, on your nonprofit, on your churches. And we have an arbitrary cap in the state, and we're coming up against it where people cannot use PPAs anymore. So we have to get that lifted. Some other things you can do, if you're a fan of writing letters to the editor, submitting op-eds, and getting this information in your local media sources, taking what you've learned here today and writing a 200-word blurb and sending it to your paper or the Pilot or the Richmond Times-Dispatch is a great way to keep the drumbeat going and just educate more people. A lot of times elected officials will have their staff reading letters to the editor as well. So talking to your elected officials, putting this in the media, and also doing what you're doing today and just talking with more people about kind of the relationships that we have with Dominion, the relationships that we have with our utilities, and the situation with climate change are kind of my major driving forces. So I'll stop there, and there's going to be time for questions at the end, and I'll be here all day, so thanks everyone.
So I think you may begin to see a bit of a pattern in terms of the progression of this. When I went solar in 2012, I only thought about my own situation at home. And I did two things that year. I bought a Prius, and I really loved the 50 miles per gallon that I got from it, and I went solar. It didn't take me very long to make the leap from, this is just one little 20-acre plot in Rockingham County, Virginia. And because I did a lot of reading, I learned that Virginia policy wasn't as favorable. I was a little shocked. Maybe I should have been, because I'm a lifelong Virginian, but I somehow missed, the messages about, forget about going solar on a large scale. I became, at that point, a distributed solar advocate, and somebody who, for the first time in her life, started to pay attention to and care about what the legislature was doing. Because I was fortunate, I made it well in under the 1% cap area. We're going to hear a story now in three parts by three presenters of a community that is, again, up against a 1% cap and managed to get the cap lifted. Admittedly, it may be a bit unique circumstance, but you're going to hear from three of my compatriots who live in the city of Harrisonburg, which has its own municipal utility. Each of them will give a brief introduction to themselves, and then tell you a little more in the story of Harrisonburg and its efforts to get more renewable energy. So we'll start with Jeff Hyde.
Hi, everyone. I have to admit, I'm a little bit intimidated by having my slides on such a large screen. I'm just not used to that, so yeah, I'll try to bear with it. I'm Jeff Hyde. I am from Harrisonburg, Virginia. I've lived there on and off since 1998, with a short stint in Phoenix, Arizona, and then I lived in England for 4 years, which was a very interesting experience when it comes to sustainability, but I'm not here to talk about that today. But so for the last year, I've been operating a program called Give Solar. You can see our logo on the screen. I'm operating under a nonprofit organization called New Community Project. We have a branch of New Community Project in Harrisonburg that's called Find and Fit. And as you can see on the screen, this project aims to help nonprofits to go solar through crowdfunding and solar barn raising. So we're basically trying to help nonprofits go solar at no out-of-pocket expenses, and they own the system. So it's a little bit different than some of the financing models that you've heard about already today. So, so you may be wondering, what is this solar barn raising thing? For those of us who live in Shenandoah Valley, there's a pretty significant Mennonite population there, and they're very familiar with this term barn raising. So historically, Amish people in particular would work together to help a family to build a barn. And so that's kind of where this term came from, and it's somewhat unique to the Shenandoah Valley because of that large Mennonite population. But we kind of took that term and ran with it, and we called what we did starting a few years ago the solar barn raising. And I'm going to show you a 30-second clip. I can figure it out. Yeah, there we go. The first solar barn raising that happened in Harrisonburg in 2016, so that would have been almost exactly 3 years ago. Not much happening yet. And it was a frosty morning, so you can see the frost melting away. So this happened over the course of about 4 hours. We installed, not exactly sure the total number of panels, but it was around 60 or 65 kilowatts worth of panels. And we have 30 or 40 volunteers that helped and volunteered to help make this happen. The system was installed on a local thrift store, a nonprofit thrift store called Gift and Thrift that does international relief development work around the world. And I think we figured out that this system will save them approximately, I think it was around $13,000 a year. And that money, of course, will help them, or that money will go towards their relief efforts rather than going towards paying electric bills. So that's what a solar barn raising looks like, and we've done a few of them, a few more of them in Harrisonburg, I think 5 total since in the last 3 years. But this project intrigued us regarding helping nonprofits to go solar, and we developed a vision for how to make this happen. And because nonprofits are such an important part of our communities, many of them act as a safety net, and the health of our nonprofits also reflect the health of our communities. So we felt like it was really important, also as an access issue, to help nonprofits go solar, because so often solar is only available to people in middle income or even upper income. So part of the idea behind this project is to help lower income people benefit from solar energy. So yeah, a few reasons why nonprofits lack of incentives, tax credits and depreciation. So individual homeowners as well as businesses can take advantage of some of these incentives, but many of you probably know that nonprofits don't have these incentives. High upfront costs. Solar makes nonprofits more resilient. So we're trying to strengthen our nonprofits through renewable energy. So, you know, once they install on the roof, they, for the next 25 years, they're gonna, if not eliminate their bill, greatly reduce their bill. Okay, so the first nonprofit that we chose was an organization called Our Community Place, which serves the homeless and homeless population as well as people who are struggling for housing. And so they have a day center that they operate. They serve meals at the day center, and it's a place for people who struggle with their housing to go during the daytime and have a welcoming place to stay, welcoming faces, and food to eat. So this is actually, you can see in the photo that the panels are on the building. This photo is actually taken the same day that we installed the panels by someone who happened to be flying over in a plane, which was really quite a coincidence. But so on this roof line, we have 17.4 kilowatts. The system was installed, so I don't have the date on there, but it was a year ago in November. So it's been up for a year. It's eliminated 75% of SU people's electric bill, saved them about $3,000 a year. And the total cost of the system was about $21,000. And some of you may be scratching your heads, you know, that seems kind of low. So basically, through this project, we've tried to do everything we can to keep the cost low. So we were able to keep the cost at, I think this project was maybe $1.10 per watt. Again, the focus of the project is to minimize the cost of the nonprofit. So I think I go into some of the financial parts on the next slide, or actually the next one after this. These are some of the sponsors. So we go out in the community and we try to get churches and nonprofit organizations and other community groups to sponsor a project like the project that you just saw on the roof. So so Climate Action Alliance of the Valley would be one of the sponsors who is involved with that group. So we go there and say, hey, would you be willing to donate $1,000 to help make this project possible on a nonprofit? And we're pretty successful at getting 5 or 6 local groups to each donate $1,000 to help make these projects possible. And the photo here is a donation from our local food co-op who chose to support the project at Our Community Place. So here's some of the finances for those who are interested in numbers. The total cost of the system was right around $20,000. We raised $21,000. I failed to say earlier, but this project was funded through a grant from Merck, the pharmaceutical company. We have a local Merck facility not too far from Harrisonburg. So they put up funding for each of the solar projects, but then the heavy lift of this concept is the fundraising, as you might imagine. So we, as I mentioned, we try to get sponsors to each donate $1,000, but then a big part of this is also raising awareness about solar and trying to get lots of people involved in raising funds. So we did a crowdfunding campaign with the idea being that we try to get people to donate $20 to $30, you know, trying to keep it accessible to a lot of people. And we raised almost $7,000 through that method. As you see, 150 donors with an average donation of more like $45. So this is the barn raising, solar barn raising that happened about a year ago on the roof of Our Community Place. And we have a very dedicated group of volunteers who participated in a number of these solar barn raisings. Anywhere from 20 to 40 people are involved. And a lot of the initial work is already done. So we're mainly using volunteers to help get the panels up on the roof, put them down on the racking, screw down the clamps, and they're not doing any of the electrical connections. I'll have you miss. We do get electricians to come in and do some of the more technical aspects of installation. So I'm going to dwell on this slide for a little bit. And I guess I can't move from here, but this is a record from our local utility of the energy usage from our community place. And it's pretty stark as far as the bill. I'll see if I can. So the solar system was installed, let's see, right around this date here, December 7th, 2018. And you can see the electricity usage was, if I go over here, maybe 2,000 kilowatt hours in that month. And so it was installed in December. So the usage or the production by the solar system probably isn't really reflected until the January billing. So you can see that their usage falling. The blue line here and the red line, those are the average temperatures. And you can see in the summertime there's a peak having to do with probably refrigeration, electricity, or air conditioning, things like that. But I'm going to use April as an example because it makes me look good. So the May bill would have been the April usage, and I believe it was $60. That's not reflected on here. And in April of 2018, it was $360. So those are the types of savings that we're able to achieve. I have to, in full disclosure, this particular solar array produces really well in the springtime. April, May, June is its best production based on the incline of the panels. But you can see that this makes a big difference for nonprofits and their electricity usage and the bills that go along with that usage. I'll wrap it up. Okay. The second project we did was at Gemeinschaft Home, which is a transitional home for people who are leaving prison and trying to get established in the community with a job and housing, things like that. They usually spend up to, I believe it's 90 days in this home. And so we felt like this was also another a good nonprofit to work with. And this is a photo of their roof lines. And this is not the actual panels, but just the plan. So yeah, we planned a 25 kilowatt system that would save Gemeinschaft about $5,000 a year. And you can see the reduction in CO2 emissions associated with that. Here's the solar barn raising that happened this summer and back in June. If you look carefully, you might see some of the folks on the panel here and some of these photos. Actually, you guys weren't at this one, were you? See that. But I had some good photographers that were taking photos at this event, so we've got some really great photos. Wonderful background in the photos of that's our valley. You know, it's a good community building event to get to know people. You sit down for a meal together, and yeah. So for this project, we raised about $25,000, which actually came up short of the total cost of $32,000. There came a point in the local electric code where we had to include optimizers as part of the solar system, and that adds about $60 per panel to the cost. So we came up a little bit short, but we still felt like it was a successful project. Again, the sources of funding you see up there. And this that's the website for the Solar project, and my contact information if anybody wants to get in touch. I do want to say, because it was mentioned already, someone mentioned the possibility of Habitat homes going solar, and I'm currently in conversation with the local board of our Habitat chapter to try to figure out a way that we can get solar panels on their local Habitat projects. So it's early in the discussion, so if any of you have any ideas of funding models and fundraising possibilities, I'd hope to talk to you. Thank you.
Technically, we're supposed to finish up in 10 minutes. I'm not sure we're going to be able to quite do that because we started about 15 minutes late, so we'll do the best we can. I'll preface the next person's remarks by saying that, to the best of my knowledge, there was no solar in Harrisonburg until 2010. at which time Eastern Mennonite University installed panels. And our local municipal utility was introduced to the concept of net metering, which it had never had to deal with before. And a single homeowner in that year went solar, and he happened to be an attorney. And so he introduced them to the concept of net metering and convinced them that it was in everyone's best interest for them to, if not embrace it, at least allow it. That happened at that time. They're not covered by the state law that governs Dominion and APCO and the electric co-op. So the director gave a 1% cap, mimicking what was in place for the big utility. And from there, things have taken off a bit. There were the solar co-ops, as I mentioned, and you're going to hear another slice of what's been going on in this arena. Who's next? Okay, Dr. Doug Hendren, who will introduce himself first. And let's try to see if we can finish up with as best we can by 12:40 with some you and Tom, so we can get some questions.
Joy, you might have to help me close that out.
I'm sorry.
I'm a Mac user, I'm illiterate. And there's a magic button.
And Jack, you know the magic button, I can't find it.
We can work it out.
The one that looks like a presentation.
That?
No.
Over, two
Over.
more.
Yep, that
Okay, well, I don't have to introduce Harrisonburg next. 55,000 people, but James Madison is almost half again as many. And Eastern Mennonite is another university which is very small, but actually was the first solar installation. I think they were they and Tom Dominowski, whom Joy just mentioned, were the first. I always do mix up, was that 2010 or 2011?
I think it was 2010, but I'm not sure.
Jeff has already talked about our solar barn raising tradition. And the bottom item here, the 3 solarized initiatives, which have now resulted in Harrisonburg being the first city in Virginia to hit the 1%, is mostly up to Joy here. She's a real bulldog when it comes to organizing these things, and we're trying to get her to do a 4th one, at least as an advisor. Our basic arrangement is we do not buy straight from the Dominion, but it goes through Harrisonburg Electric Commission, which is a municipal utility, but you know, it doesn't really act municipal. They're fond of advertising public power, but they do produce $5 million, unfortunately, that's the green arrow here, every year. That goes into the city coffers, and arguably this is a regressive tax that falls more heavily on low-income people who spend a bigger chunk of their budget every month on electricity, particularly if they live in poorly insulated houses or rental spaces that they can't control. And what does it do? Well, it offsets my real estate taxes. Personally, I don't think that's ethical, but it gives the city, it puts us in an interesting and potentially challenging position in terms of doing something about it. We've already mentioned that the 1% cap on solar that they just kind of arbitrarily put in several years ago has just recently, in the past couple of months, been changed to a 2% cap on solar. We have several grassroots organizations in town, the oldest of which some of you may be on their